This conference will now be recorded.
And this conference will now be recorded.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, that's all right. The first order of business is public comment. Is there any public comment? Hearing none. The next order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Is there a motion? I heard some kind of sound, which I'm going to take as a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Okay, item number 4 is a change in the bylaws impacting the committee. And before we go forward, and I don't, who is going to do the presentation on the bylaw revisions?
John, this is
Brian.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'll be doing them. And Eric, you'll pull up the slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys
just as a point of information. I'm actually in the hospital right now. And
oh no, are you okay, John?
Yeah, I just have a problem with a infected leg, and but the big problem I have is that the cell phone service is not very good here. So I'm not quite sure. I couldn't get on the GoToMeeting thing, and I called in on my cell phone, but it's a little spotty. So if I bug out for some reason, I just ask that you continue on until I'm able to reconnect. So with that little point of information, we'll go to Brian to talk about the changes. Brian?
Okay, Mr. Ironman. I love it. Oh, goodness, John. All right, so so I wanted to talk about the change in the bylaws. So you might recall back in March when we had a board meeting, we had proposed several red line revisions to the bylaws. We didn't at the time have a majority quorum to be able to review and approve those bylaw changes. So what Eric and I wanted to do was just go through those red line changes with the Budget and Operations Committee and specifically call out those recommended bylaw changes that are appropriate to this committee. So there are 3 overarching items that are budget and operations related. And these recommendations are coming from a couple of places. They're coming from the work that the governor's office had been doing with the quasi-publics to coordinate. So there are some best practices in here from other quasis. They come from past audits of, for example, like the Port Authority, as well as Governor Rell's look into the quasis back in 2005. There was a report. So what we tried to do with the overall bylaw changes was take the best practices and modify our bylaws. And this is a subset of them. So the first one is including a new treasurer as part of the board. So that would be elected by the board. You all know that the chair of the board per statute is determined by the governor, and the governor Lamont has identified Lonnie as the chair of the board. The vice chair and secretary are voted on by the members of the board, and Deep in general has held the vice chair seat since the organization began, and Matt Ranelli has been the voted on secretary. So we found in other quasis bylaws the inclusion of a treasurer, and right now in the Green Bank's life cycle, it's great, as we're looking at our bond indenture and issuing bonds, that we begin to think about a treasurer whose primary responsibility would be the general financial oversight, the fiscal condition of the Green Bank. So we included language in the revised bylaw of a new treasurer who may be elected by the board and shall serve as an ex officio member of the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. I'll get to that in a second, and the Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee. We haven't thought about who the treasurer would be. We just know that we need to include a spot for a treasurer as we continue to mature as an organization. The second part was, and this was really clear from the Governor Rel review of quasis, was that compensation, their recommendation around looking at compensation was throughout the entirety of that report. So one thing that we wanted to bring into our structure, our committee structure, was a compensation responsibility for the Budget and Operations Committee. So we're suggesting the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. And there are certain things, so that formalizes compensation. Some quasis have their own compensation committee, a standalone committee. Others have it blended in. So we just felt, let's not create another committee. Let's blend it into where decisions are made on merit and promotion pools. We felt it was appropriate here. And then the third thing are the expansion of various responsibilities underneath the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee in the red line revisions to the bylaws. So the first would be to include the adoption of a formal compensation philosophy. Some of you recall back in October of 2017, we had Cardis Larson, who did an assessment of the Green Bank salaries and career ladder. One of their recommendations was that the organization adopt a formal compensation philosophy. So we included that as a proposed responsibility of the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. And then the remaining two were identified in the REL reports. An annual review of comp time. So director level and above do not receive comp time. Below the director level, for example, before the pandemic hit, we had a home show in Hartford. I spent a day there on Sunday, along with several other staff members. They got comp time. I didn't get comp time. So this would be an annual review of comp time. It is reported for CT, and staff members who earn comp time get to use it like vacation time. And then an annual review of the paid or reimbursable education assistance. So we have in our employee handbook a policy in support of education reimbursement. So this would be to review those reimbursable expenses that we made over the course of the year to support professional development of the staff to make sure that it's consistent with the policy. So these were a couple of things, and that's important because we'll talk about in the budget professional development as an important mechanism to build our future leaders within the organization. Eric, anything I forget there?
No, I think that summed it up well.
Great. So yeah.
So do any of the members of the board have any questions about what Brian just laid out? Brian, is there having an overview of the organization as it is, have you spotted or are you aware of any problems in the past regarding comp time or educational reimbursement in the Green Bank?
I think on comp time, I don't think it's an issue because we've had it's pretty much known director level and above, no comp time. Below and get it. So those who are below director levels have to go to their supervisor for, an event at night during the week or the weekend. So it's an approval. I don't think we're going to find anything there, but that'll be part of the review. And then the reimbursable education assistance. I don't know, Eric. I'm thinking of who. I mean, we've had Rob Schmidt, Isabel Hazelwood, University of New Haven, the CCSU system. I think in some cases we're doing online education. So that would be reviewing what we've reimbursed to the policy.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think we will, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think our policy is pretty generous and we've been enforcing it pretty well. I mean, most of our staff that we've been reimbursing have finished up their degrees recently. I mean, that others could decide to pursue graduate work, but we'll bring that to the committee as and when that happens.
Well, I think it's fairly complicated actually to abuse education reimbursements. I think it requires a lot, so it doesn't strike me as something that somebody from the Green Bank is going to put their effort into doing. But I guess, as you say, we'll find out. Now, do we need to put a motion up on these changes, or how does it work?
So we didn't have any motion for this. It was to just review red lines. If there was any guidance that you wanted to give us before the June 25th meeting, like, we're happy to take that. This is just a subset of that. We'll go through this again at that meeting.
Well, then I guess I would urge the members of the committee to review the documents, and if they had suggestions, to forward them to Brian before the meeting of the full committee on the 26th.
Hey, John, this is Eric. Just have a question.
Yeah.
And by the way, best to you, Mr. Iron Man. Absolutely. I was just curious, are these measures that are primarily spurred by, review of other best practices from quasis? So are these reports, do they have to be sent anywhere? Or they need to be just kept on file for purposes of potential future audits? Do they have to be reviewed with the board? Kind of what happens to this data once it's collected?
Yeah, great question. So on those the education assistance and the comp time, so this would be the first time we do it. I think what we would do is, after the end of the fiscal year, during the summer, we put together pull the data together and put it into a memo, and present it at the September meeting. We usually take August off, so we'd probably pull the data in July, run the analysis in August, and then present it in September. So that's what I think we would report it to the board on an annual basis.
Okay, great, thanks.
Well, just a follow up on that. This is not the kind of information that it takes 2 years to collate, right?
That's right. Yeah, there's not going to be too many records.
No.
Actually, the core CT will pull comp time pretty easily, and the annual.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then we appreciate the information, and members of the committee that may want to weigh in more can be in touch with you on it.
Excellent. Okay, let's move to the next section. So the next section, the next agenda item is the succession plan. So let's go to the first slide. So again here, there are pieces of the succession plan that are relevant to the operations of the organization. So we wanted to pull those out. So typically the Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee has the responsibility of succession management. So we presented the succession plan to the ACG committee already. Catherine, over the years, made it a management practice for me to do the succession plan. You know, we've made it a key focus of our organization to attract and retain the best and the brightest. And Catherine always felt that having a succession plan in place helps you to manage that. I've come to grow very fond of it. I think it's an important process that you go through with your senior leadership, and it becomes a blueprint for replacing staff members should instances arise where you can no longer retain them. So it's become a standard operating procedure. We've done several of them. The last one, the one that we currently have through the fiscal year, this fiscal year, worked really well. We had 11 senior staff members in it. 6 of the 11 actually went through a transition in this 3-year period. So, you know, over half of our senior leadership team went through a transition. One retired, George Bellis, our Vice President of Financing and Operations. Yeah, if you can go back, Eric. Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. 2 were transferred to IPC, Inclusive Prosperity Capital, as part of our sustainability plan in managing through the sweeps. That's Carrie O'Neill and Ben Healy. And then 3 were severed over time for various reasons, 2 as a result of the sweeps, and 1 as a result of performance within the organization. So the plan worked really well in terms of what was laid out to cover them. Although what I would say is, Eric won't say it, but he has managed to take on a number of more responsibilities as these staff members have transitioned. So one of them was Vice President of Human Resources. Eric now serves that function. One of them was our Managing Director of Marketing. Eric now oversees the marketing team. So he plays a big role in picking them up, and he's really overloaded. He's not going to say it, but you should know that, and you'll see in the operating plan what we've kind of flagged to help with it. So this plan, this is the third plan, updates the second, includes the overview of the Cardis Larson work from that October 2017 board meeting. It has a lot of information in it. It's really like a dossier on our senior team. Benefit tiers, likelihoods to depart. I mean, we had really candid conversations about their future with the organization and their aspirations, what they want to achieve. And we try to reflect that in the document, again, to serve as a blueprint, you know, in helping us prepare in the event that we're unable to retain that senior leadership. Next slide, Eric. So the next slide has to do with kind of what are the top 5 motivations and discouragements from the senior team. It's no mystery, you know, the team is really motivated by non-compensation benefits. They're all here for mission and vision. So they believe in what we're doing. They want to see strong results. They want to have their colleagues be the best. Work-life balance is really important. I think if I had this conversation today after COVID-19 and seeing a number of my senior team now having to balance teaching children at home in the middle of the day and manage, it's just, I would imagine this one would have lifted higher. In terms of discouragements, you know, it's not these are the things that you would assume. A political appointee to the organization, change in the mission from finance to grants, Obviously like sweeps, although I don't see that in here. I would imagine that's a big, big concern for our team. But you all know them. They're doing incredible work. They give of themselves more than typically what public service asks of them. So good team. Let's go to the next slide. Great. So the findings of the succession plan is this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. Is we do have a lack of current successors. If you looked at the last year's plan, the plan that we had where we replaced 6 of the 11, we had successors that could step in. Now of my senior team, there are very few of them where I have successors. So that really worries me in terms of thinking about who can step in. We do have strong future leadership potential, meaning we have rising stars who are coming through the ranks, and we need to continue to support their professional development. I can tell you that they are like being plucked right from our organization as we speak. People know they're great, and they come and they recruit them. So we need to continue to build, grow, and nurture them because they are our future. And then lastly is, who knows what will happen in the fall, but should things happen where Joe Biden becomes president, it's likely that there will be one or more senior staff members that gets called to serve. So that's just kind of a flag. Next slide, Eric. Cool. I think this is the last one. So this is the part of the bylaws that deals with the succession plan. I mentioned earlier that the ACG committee is responsible for the succession plan, although there are relevant responsibilities to the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. So the first is what we are doing, over the next couple of weeks, and what we've been doing is the review and the approval of the annual operating budget and plan of the operation. The second is the recruitment and retention of qualified personnel, employee training, development, evaluation and advancement, employee compensation and benefits. So all the things that you're looking at on compensation, benefits, training and development budgets, and merit and promotion pools, those are all important to that. The new inclusion of recommending the adoption of a formal compensation policy. One of the things the overarching thing we challenged Cardiff Larson to do was to help us develop a system of compensation that was internally equitable and externally competitive. So what that means is that the staff that we have within the organization today, that those who are serving similar functions are being and have the same or varying experiences, that they're being equitably compensated, that there's limited variability in terms of where they are in the career ladder outside of their expertise. And externally competitive is, they did a benchmark of other private and quasi-public types of compensation structures. So we always went by this principle: internally equitable and externally competitive. It just felt simple enough. And then lastly is the staffing plan as developed. And I know Eric specifically has that coming up as the first item coming up here. So I just wanted to flag those things that are relevant in the succession plan, also within the bylaws that are pertinent to the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. Eric, anything else here?
No, you summed it up well, BT.
Okay. So this was all
So are there members of the committee that want to comment or have questions about the report on this? I have a question based on, without the formal analysis and based on just your own knowledge, does it seem as though green bank jobs are externally competitive at this point?
So yeah, Eric, you want to respond? I'll take it.
You can go first.
There you go. So I here's my worry is I think we've built a great rising star group of professionals who, are just going to develop and do great things as they grow through the ranks. My word, and we've seen kind of external evidence of this currently. Local businesses offering 25% more with bonuses and can just pluck them from us. So what that tells me is we need to work harder in supporting their professional development and helping promote them through the organization so that they continually are vested in the organization. So there are threats, and I don't want none of us want our future leaders to get plucked to go into other organizations, but we're happy to develop leaders, but we want them to serve our mission.
Do you? And I don't. I'm guessing we probably don't. But has there ever been any discussion about a senior executive recruitment policy? People that are at the other end of their career that may want to do something good before they stop doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's how we've attracted some of the talent that we have now, without making that a formal effort. And I think that's a great way for us to continue to develop the pipeline. But I think that also competes with the goal of moving people through up and through the organization that we're investing in at lower levels. So we need to continue to balance the two. And I think it depends on the opportunity at the time.
The other thing, John, that the ACG committee talked about, and they weren't shy, was we should continuously keep tabs of people we see out in the marketplace that we think have really strong capability and values alignment with the Green Bank, and not be shy about recruiting them if we need to. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna keep that running list, and
yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, like baseball scouts.
Right. I'm trying it out as we speak. Yes.
This is Lonnie. This is Lonnie. I mean, I really am a champion of that, of really understanding who's out there and with whom you've had good experiences, across state lines and all of that, kind of know where the talent is. But, beyond that, I mean, I know that you really talk to folks and try to get a sense of what their career path looks like. And it's, in this ecosystem, it's so clear that there's the trailing spouse issue as well. So it's really good to keep an eye on the full spectrum of what the opportunities and possibilities are, because suddenly somebody who may have stayed for a while suddenly has their spouse has an opportunity that needs to be addressed. So I really applaud you for really digging in on this, because this is hard.
Great point. Yeah.
The one other thought that I have is that you ought to include Harvard along with Yale. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, and the University of Washington in Seattle, I wouldn't mind that either.
There we are. So, is there more discussion on this? And I take it this is another thing that we don't need to take action on today.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, so again, if committee members have added thoughts about this, they can be in touch with Brian or Eric, and heading into the main meeting of the board on the 26th. Okay, so now
Thanks,
we've
John.
got the budget plan.
Yep. Welcome to the main event.
Yeah.
So last time we reviewed targets and revenues for the organization, and let me just get to the overall plan. Last time we went through proposed targets, revenues, we had an update as to where we were in the office space search. Today, we're going to go through the staffing plan. We're going to go through expenses for the organization in general and for the incentive programs. We are this afternoon finishing up the financing programs, and so we will mail that with the entire budget, ideally tomorrow, for our final B&O meeting next week. Today, we will also give an update on the office space search. And then next week, we will go through the consolidated expenses with a special focus on the financing programs. We'll talk through the investments and capital resource needs. And ultimately, we would love to get a recommendation from the committee to the board around budgets and targets, as well as one on office space. And the office space is still evolving, so we can talk about that when we get there. So, any questions on the plan? All right, I will move on to the staffing plan. So, staffing plan. What you see here is, I think, a good presentation of something that started to look pretty complex when we were batting through it. So I want to thank Jane for all the work on this. We have at the top just our general headcount as it is today, the 34 headcount with the 4 adds that we made during this year, of which 3 were in last year's budget. One was kind of an urgent need in terms of processing backlogs on RSIP and maintaining stability on that team. And then at present, we have 4.5 open headcount that was budgeted for FY20 that we haven't actually been able to fill for various reasons. So we have one open headcount on Bert's team, 1 on mine, 1 on Jane's, and then 2 on Mackey's. There's a possibility that 1 or 2 of these might be filled by the end of the fiscal year. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I know that the search is in progress for 3 of them, and on one of them, they're getting pretty close to a decision. We are proposing 2 new adds to headcount, a special advisor to the president and CEO, and this is really to help Brian with a lot of the interactions that we have with Pura and Deep with regard to policy as we're headed into a long session, and with all of the grid modernization pieces that are going on with Pura and the transition to a tariff. We're frequently asked to opine, if not more actively engage in these proceedings. And this is something, having somebody in that position to help with these analyses would greatly help staff. The other position is a residential asset manager. So this year we added a commercial asset manager whose role is to monitor our commercial investments and our commercial fleet to ensure optimal production, that we're generating RECs, that we're monetizing systems in forward capacity markets, that we are collecting lease payments or PPA payments correctly. We're truing up all of these, that loan payments are in correctly, and just making sure that all of that is running smoothly. Now what we're looking to do is pull in somebody to do this on the RSIP side, where our systems are backing all the bonds that we've been issuing, and we need to make sure that everything is producing at least at what the expectations are. that where there are discrepancies, those are investigated. We're working with the third-party system owners to make sure those are looked into, that everything is registered with PURA in terms of being a Class 1 renewable, that these are then filed with NEPOOL, and that regular generation is submitted. And it's a fairly technical process. There are lots of, and Dale and Celia will kill me for the term because I use it for everything apparently, but there are a lot of pain points in the process. And while we have come a great way in terms of automation, we still have a long way to go. We currently have Infosys through their tech hub in Hartford helping us with that, and we continue to engage around that. But this role is really key to making sure that all of that runs smoothly. And I view this role as like the coordinator to make sure that everything on this $100+ million machine of Rex is running smoothly, and that if this person does their job efficiently and effectively, ratepayers get paid back quicker through the Shreks. We're going to generate more of those more quickly, and we'll be able to transfer those to UI and Eversource, ideally sooner, once we've recovered our costs.
Eric, I have a question about those two jobs, if I might. Is it likely that one or both of them will be filled internally?
One of those, they both could be filled internally. We've had some conversations with internal candidates, and we're still working through that.
Mm-hmm.
So let me elaborate a little bit. So on the numbers next to those positions matter, like in this case, the 4. So if you look at the footnote, the transition of Celia Price from Director of Incentive Programs. So you all know that Celia Price is our current Director of Incentive Programs. So Celia has communicated to me, getting back to the succession plan, that's why we kind of set some context there, that it is likely that over the next fiscal year, between now and the end of fiscal year 2021, that she will be resigning from the organization. So this is the type of candid conversation we have with the team. And there's a lot of work on Celia's shoulders in terms of administering the incentive programs. So we're currently out on a search for the Director of Incentive Programs. It is my hope that when we hire the new Director of Incentive Programs, that I can keep Celia on board, because she has been an invaluable asset to this organization all the way back to the Clean Energy Fund days. So if I can find a way to keep her motivated and driven and with less burden than she's carrying today, then I want to do that. So special advisor is what it's kind of a placeholder for her. There have been other personnel in other state agencies that have gone from deputy commissioners to special advisors to reduce load. So that's kind of the way we've thought about it. And Celia and I are working on a position description that would do that after we hire the Director of Incentive Programs. So that's what that first one is. It would hopefully be Celia. The second one, the residential asset management, like if we've got some rising stars in the organization, this is a perfect position for somebody to step up. We've had those conversations internally. This is a position that would administer $200 million in energy and environmental assets. So no small chump change. It's everything that we're quantifying that leads into our bonds, our Green Liberty bonds. So it's a really important policy, technology, finance position that we've spotted an internal candidate for. We'd like them to apply, but we don't know if they will. I've certainly made outreach to that effect, but we are also conducting a search for that position because it's so important. We have a process now that Dale and Celia run that is sufficient, but it requires a lot of time and effort, and we really need to try to automate and make that position more efficient.
Right. Yeah, it just struck me with the special advisor in particular that the idea that a new person just joining the organization would be hard pressed to fill that kind of a job.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally the only spot that job is for Celia. and
Okay.
if Celia doesn't take it there would be, and she decided to resign, that position would go unfilled.
All right. So Eric, continue.
Moving on, certainly. So moving on, we have an additional 3 headcount that we're asking for that are contingent. That you may remember last year we did something similar when we had our application for the Energy Efficiency Partners Program and at Pura. We had said if we get approved, or if the program gets approved, we would come back seeking we have some headcount for that eventuality. Well, now we're pursuing a battery storage program separately. That's currently being developed. And if that does get approved and implemented, we would be looking for an additional 3 headcount to help with the implementation and administration of that program. And you'll see those aren't full headcount. We imagine that if we did get approved, these people would be recruited in the fall with the start date of January. And then the final thing you'll see on here is the elimination of Kim Stevenson's position, which is just reflective of that function being moved to Inclusive Prosperity Capital.
Right.
So year on year, it's a net add of about 4 headcount, excluding interns. There are 4.5 headcount, 5 including interns. But just know that 3 of those are contingent upon battery storage being approved for the organization.
Right.
Maybe let me add a little bit more on the contingency. So right now, Pura is running the Equitable Modern Grid docket, docket number 171203. Reopener number 3 deals with battery storage. And as Eric mentioned, we're already in a docket on the Electric Efficiency Partner Program to administer a battery storage incentive, which would sit on top of the RCIP. So we are putting together a proposed design now that has to be submitted by July 31st to Pura. They're going to consider all designs, and they may decide that they like a design and decide to fund it through Lonnie's old policy on the grid modernization policy from, I think it's Lonnie 2017 maybe, that summer session. But this docket, if we're successful, would create a cost recoverable incentive program to allow us to provide battery storage on top of the residential solar projects that we do. So contingent on.
Okay.
So in terms of spend, at the bottom, you'll see we have a $4.7 million spend proposed for FY21 versus a 4.1 in FY20. And we, in terms of compensation, we are requesting a merit pool and a promotion pool. However, we are not intending to implement the merit pool for the foreseeable future while everything is still under the stress and disruption that it presently is.
So where does the 600,000 or the 500,000 something increase? Where does that come from?
That's the new employees, the contingents, and the 2 new positions above.
Uh-huh. Well, there's a contingent employees, there's the 2 new positions, and then there's a couple of positions. There's a couple of other positions. One with that have to do with C-PACE or something.
Right. So those are currently open that are part of our existing budget that, while they were budgeted this year, we haven't spent anything on them because we haven't hired for them and are in the process right now.
Right.
So one of those is an assistant on the financing programs who's going to really help with the intake process and free up the members of the team to do more value add activities. And the other is somebody who's going to really focus on market engagement, and their job is going to be basically to build relationships that help get more projects into the pipeline, be that through building owners that own multiple buildings, through corporate real estate associations, through large landlords, just really focused on building pipeline there.
But the thing is that the 500,000 plus is actually has to do with 7 positions rather than 5.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. So that I think
that's in the number. That's baked into both numbers, both years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eric, Eric and Jane, maybe what we can do, to John's point, let's just bring more clarity to that number. We can probably create a column that shows of the 540,000, what is coming from the vacancies, the new hires, and the contingency, so that you can see it. Just another way of going into detail on why the variance.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, I mean, it is it's beneficial to us to indicate if the money is actually spread over more people, then it's less of an issue of how much money is going to each person than if it's spread over less people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
totally.
A lower average salary per personnel is what we would definitely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that's key. This is Lonnie. I think that's key not only for selling it to any kind of legislative body that we have to, but also the governor. There's a lot going on with them trying to
and the press
postpone the raise and all of that, and that's not happening. So showing, and also in any way that you connect with what you're doing to what the investment is going to be generating more because we're able to do more. Any time you can make that connection, we're investing because we actually want to do more, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Eric. To that point, is the position of positions that are, I think you characterized as, basically going out there and attracting more customers, if you will, for the green bank programs. Is any of the payment for those positions, the word's escaping me, but basically contingent on that attraction of more projects and customers?
So we looked into that previously, and I think we'd run into some issues. We'd had some arrangements with external consultants, deal finders, basically, that have never really netted us anything. So this is kind of another way to try that with somebody who's employed in the organization who's doing this full time. By doing that, though, we were running into some issues in terms of paying them like on a per deal basis or on a kind of a bonus for what kill what they eat, what you kill type way. So we're open to some suggestions, but I know that we were looking not to do that at this point.
You know, it's my sense that the kind of the length of the sales process within CPACE is so long that it would leave a person with like a big paycheck every 3 months or so, but in between things could get pretty thin. I mean, it's not it'd be sort of like having that kind of sales incentive on a fuel cell or something. The process takes a long time. I just don't see how you could do it's a commission is I think the word that maybe Eric was looking for. But it is.
Thank you.
It seems to me that and I can understand the thinking of on it, but it just seems it's too long a time period for the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if the board would like us to look into, I mean, the idea of commission in the public sector is really innovative, right? We just don't see that. But a performance-based compensation where you start somebody low and they're able to grow and exceed compensation targets by performing, delivering more, beyond our target acquisitions in terms of CPACE and solar PPA. That would be great, but what's in the back of my head are legislative leaders saying, "Oh, now you're providing bonuses to government employees." There's a balance like to it. I think it would be great if we can figure out a way of doing it.
And this is Lonnie again. I mean, I think you're setting up. I mean, I of course live in a world of commissions, so it works for me. But you're setting up a system where you're either succeeding or you're not. And so for those people who aren't generating as much, do they get punished? I'm just thinking in a legislative context of what these debates look like and these internal discussions look like. So it becomes, well, this one's delivering, but that one's not. So wait, we're going to pay this one more for doing the job he or she was supposed to be doing. Well, what about this one? Who is it? You know what I'm saying? It's sort of compare and contrast. So you really need to be sophisticated in how you develop it and present it.
Exactly.
I also think that even though the Green Bank is not represented, that the public employee unions might really it might attract their attention as being something that they would strongly object to.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, I mean, it doesn't mean, like don't design a plan, because maybe it could be a great plan, but I'm just raising a possible issue.
Well, and this is Lonnie again. If you could create a hybrid where, you have a certain sector of employees who aren't fully, state employees in the context we all understand it, but they're sort of delivering, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's an interesting thing to think about. Is there sort of a new lane for those folks?
And it's something that we can continue to explore and have conversations on. I mean, I know there are other quasis that have done something similar. Not that they are things we necessarily want to copy entirely, but we can investigate. So things like the lottery is the one that comes to mind in terms of their sales reps.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't use the lottery right now.
That is exactly where I was headed, Madam Chair. But
oh man! But any kind of model where that works is they can, but don't use the lottery. I mean, the lottery has been through. That's radioactive right now.
Yeah. So that yeah, I was avoiding that analogy as much as I could. But so I think what we could have as a takeaway on this is we can look into ways that we could implement that as part of bringing Cardis Larson back this next year to do to refresh the compensation study as we previously discussed. And
Okay.
seek
Yeah,
their
I think
guidance.
that's a good idea. Work it into that because oh, it's just a shame it's done everywhere, I guess, outside of state government. But I understand there's certain customs that must be considered.
I hear you.
The other
That
principle.
was very gentlemanly, Eric. Very nicely done.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a nice day.
The other principle of this too is the more quote unquote business that's generated, the more loans that we do means that we're generating more interest income, which gets us to our sustainability faster, which is our goal, so that we're
right.
in a more stable position. So that's the kind of foundation factor that we would try to build from, is any way of trying to encourage getting to sustainability faster is where we want to head.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Brian, that the whole point of the thing is to get a C-PACE, roaring if we can. And so whatever it is that does that, whatever the formula is, that's where we want to be.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns on this? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move. Okay. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the rest of the expenses. So as far as the organization goes and what we're going to go through today, I'm going to first talk about the incentive programs expenses. So what you're seeing in your mailer here in that line. And then I'll come back and I'll talk about the general operations expenses. So for incentive programs, the big changes that you're seeing here year on year are due to the proposed battery storage in the budget. And you can see that broken out here in two categories. We have battery storage, which is RSIP recoverable, and then we have battery storage that would be recovered or cost recovered through another mechanism at PURA. And so one is the contingent column is the one that would be covered at PURA or recovered through PURA. The other one that's recovered through RSIP is all of our work investigating the other and working on getting something set up, because ultimately that is helping the residential solar market. In terms of overall line item differences in the budget that I want to highlight to you, there are larger differences in total comp and benefits, and that has to do with the transition of sell-your price, as well as the three contingent positions that we spoke about earlier. In terms of program administration and development, we have our funds for emphasis. Well, they're currently engaged with us, helping us map processes and identify the pain points. We know that there's going to be a recommendation that comes out of that, and it's going to cost us something to do something with that recommendation. And I think this is a small price to pay to assure that you're getting paid back quickly, or as quickly as possible. The We've moved T-Rex, which is our online data room for the bond issuance, is in here. It was not last year. You'll see that we have marketing expenses on here, and that is significantly different year on year. This past year, we had our just overall brand awareness campaign was in there in preparation for the bond issuance. Having not issued the bonds, we haven't incurred all of the marketing expense that we set aside for that. We're currently aiming for that bond issuance to be launched by the end of this month, so it could be incurred this year, but there's a very good chance that will roll over into next fiscal year. So we've budgeted for 2 bond issuances, for 2 RSIP tranches in fiscal year 21. We have some additional consulting work in here. We've brought on a woman who was previously with one of our solar installers who was looking for some part-time work, and she's really been just astounding at helping us clear our backlog of inspections that we needed to get done for our RSIP. And I mean, earlier in the year, this backlog seemed like it was going to take staff just eons to get through, and it's really been coming down through her work and through the work of our interns. And the other point I want to highlight on here is we have bond issuance costs, which is the big driver between what we have actually incurred this year and what we had estimated in the budget last year. You'll note that the bond issuance costs are significantly less than what we had budgeted, and that's a reflection of us going to the municipal markets this time as opposed to going to the asset-backed markets that we did last time. So there's a significant savings that's being realized as part of that. So that's high level where we're going, incentive programs. Any questions? Okay. No. Hearing none, I will move on to general operations. And on general operations, now most of these items are things that are, a lot of these items are things that are determined at the organizational level and then get allocated out to programs. And unlike some organizations, we don't fully allocate all of them. So there's pieces of rent that are allocated to each of the programs, and then some stay just for the overall running of the organization. For those that aren't familiar with our budget. So the way that I'm going to go through this is I'm going to focus on the items that are not programmatic and are not getting allocated, or they may get allocated out to the programs further down, but just not at what we say is at the general operations level. So I'm going to start with a couple points on here, which is you'll see a decrease in research and development. And just before this meeting, I made one change to that, so we'll talk about that when we get to that. You'll see an increase in the marketing budget, and that's due to us building pipeline and refocusing on the brand. Our EM&B is nearly flat. Our other operating expenses are increased due to just how we roll up our entities, and then increased depreciation related to our move of our office space. And then finally, our capital budget is increased due to the proposed move. So starting with research and development, we're proposing on here what's about 10% of what we had proposed last year. We're going to actually increase that by an additional $40,000, and it's $40,000 that we're just moving from the SMART-E program budget here to address renewable heating and cooling. This is related to metering, specifically metering renewable heating and cooling systems, so air source and ground source heat pumps that are related to the special offer that we're going to be offering for SMART-E next year. And after some discussions, we felt that would go better with R&D because we really want access to the information that's coming from that. We want to to be able to demonstrate their impact. And so we felt that that sits better here than in the SMART-E budget. The other items that are in here is to complete the transportation, to complete the energy burden study that includes transportation that we started this year. And the initial draft of that is, I found it to be really interesting. It's a really good piece of work that's really insightful about how the costs of energy are really impacting LMI communities in the state, especially when you take into account the cost of transport. And then we have our continued work with the EEB around joint jobs numbers that I know, BG, you've been running point on that. I know you guys have made great progress this year.
Yeah, so just maybe a quick
Eric,
comment.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
Okay, just to kind of locate myself in the midst of all these numbers, when you said you're adding 40,000 to research and development, that is 40,000 added to 31,000, is that right?
Right. So we're still running at a fraction of last year budget, and less than last year's actuals.
I just wanted to make sure I was connecting with the right lines on here. Okay.
And apologies for the confusion on that.
Maybe let me add just a little bit more context on a couple of the items. So renewable heating and cooling, this year what we did was we invested that $5,000 into a regional renewable heating and cooling calculator that Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut are going to adopt. That will essentially tell residential homeowners what their energy savings are dollar-wise, what the greenhouse gas emission reductions are for moving from heating oil, propane, natural gas to renewable heating and cooling. So that was great because we were able to leverage a lot of the regional states contributions. Avangrid was contributed to it because they're in the region, and some foundations contributed. So that's great. What we're thinking about this year is with the SMART-E interest rate buy down, we're going to see some ground source heat pumps coming online. And what we don't want to miss is the opportunity to actually collect the data on how those systems are performing. If we're not data collecting, then we're only able to speak to high level what we think those systems are doing. This will actually help and enable that industry to grow and be able to potentially sell energy as a service down the road, like we saw with solar on leases and PPAs. So they totally need it. They're very nascent. And then the job study, which I sent the draft to you, Eric. Actually, Eric, Mike, and John, as part of the joint committee today, you saw the first rough draft of the joint job study between us, the utilities, and DEEP. This is just continuing that budget for next year, just doing it for 2021.
Well, the one thing I would say, Brian, on the heat pumps, I'm really glad that there is a focus on saving carbon, because when I went to the contractors meeting, and I attended the heat pump workshop because I didn't know much about it, and that was the one thing they were not selling it in terms of its impact on climate change at all. They had a lot of different reasons why it was good, but none of them talked about saving carbon, which I think for some customers is going to be a strong motivating factor.
Exactly, and we noted that in our comp plan as one of the 3 leading wedges to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? So in the state climate plan, renewable heating and cooling is the 3rd area of priority behind decarbonizing the grid and moving transportation to the grid.
Right,
so
right.
Fundamental to it. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a little bit of time left, so go, Eric, go.
Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. Overall marketing, we're looking at increases year on year, and a lot of this is built. Half of this $500,000 increase is due to a reclassification of money that's currently in the programs budget on CPACE that related to our solar MAP program, which is our municipal assistance, where it's our white glove concierge service for municipalities, getting them through to install solar on municipal buildings. We're moving that to marketing. It's just a reclass. The rest of the differences are around rebuilding brand and rebuilding budget. The big changes in here is we've reclassed and moved things out of programs overall to the organization. It's more of a focus shift that I'm pushing the team on to build relationships, not by program, but by organization, that we really want externally people to view the green bank as their problem solver when it comes to energy costs and financing those solutions, rather than, hey, you guys are the CPACE place, or hey, you guys help me get a pre-dev loan for multifamily. So those are the points that I really want to highlight here. That what seems like a huge difference is at least 68% of that is just a reclass. And then the rest is just related to the overall building of the brand. And there are some things that, look, in the past, our marketing budgets have, we've had big goals, and I know we haven't spent all that we've asked for. And so I'm coming into this as somebody, who's with new responsibilities in this area, knowing that, but it's also in this time of COVID-19 and not knowing when we're going to be able to do things physically versus apart. We've given ourselves a little bit of breathing room budget-wise, so that if things can't happen physically, we'll be able to address those with other alternatives. So our large contractor event, which we were originally aiming to turn into a larger green bank stakeholder event, will probably need to be rethought, or could potentially need to be rethought. So, any questions here? All right, no. I'm going to move on to general operating expenses. Here we have a small increase year on year, primarily driven by depreciation and insurance. This is what I mentioned earlier. The depreciation is a result of forecast costs in depreciating those leasehold improvements related to the move, and then $200,000 of additional insurance that we were paying, but we were paying it in Meriden Hydro, or what's the entity called now? CQB, Meriden Hydro, that now is consolidated and rolled up to the Green Bank. And then in terms of capital expenses, you'll see a significantly increased budget here, and that is due to moving to new offices. Questions before I move on to the office space update? Are there items that the committee would like addressed or answered when we come back next week that will help us get to a recommendation?
Eric, I'm just wondering, and sorry, I'm on the road, not visually seeing the spreadsheets, but are we going to be talking about revenue projections as well?
Yeah, we went through those last meeting. We finalized those, so I will make sure those are included in the next mailing. You'll get the full packet, and I'll make sure that we go through those at a high level, so you'll see that as well. But yeah, there were, yeah. Okay.
So Eric, we're having a special meeting on the 16th.
I'm just confirming, John, the date. Yes, that's what I have on my calendar. is 3 p.m. on the 16th.
So I'm going to recommend really that committee members take the time. If you can get the packet out, sooner rather than later, that members really take the time to go over the whole shebang. And if there are questions that you have, if you can give Eric or Brian a heads up beforehand, I think that would help expedite the discussion.
Yeah, sure. I asked to today, just top of mind, I got a call from a Rhode Island reporter, maybe a week ago, a little less, indicating that there was some degree of effort in Rhode Island to suspend the payments on electric bills that support energy efficiency, and was wondering if there was any kind of similar effort going on in Connecticut. So we don't take the time today, but just be interested to hearing from Lonnie and others, if you're hearing any rumblings about any kind of activity that might impact revenues over the next 6 to 12 months.
I think, Eric, what we can do is we can send around, I think we sent it to the board last time, the Connecticut Industrial Energy Consumers Alliance petitioned PURA to stop the funds during COVID-19. And I think PURA's pushed that conversation to the energy affordability docket, I think. But Eric, I can re-pull those and we can send them out. Yeah.
Okay.
You'll see our response to their filing, which was essentially, if the businesses themselves are closed down and not using energy, then they're not paying into the funds anyway. So therefore, it's not really an issue. So, but I'll send you our documentation on it that Brian filed.
Surprised I didn't hear from him. If I responded
around it.
I'm sorry?
Do you happen to have an article that was written about it, or was this just?
I don't. I have. She sent me her contact info. There might have been something. I'll look it up. Yeah. I of course said.
Yeah,
this is Connecticut. We would never consider something like that. So. far too important to our businesses. Blah 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 blah. I had my dark green bank hat on at the time. So
man, oh man, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, going back to John's comment, I wanted to do something good before the end of my career.
The other thing you can always say is, "I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear you."
Yeah. Oh dear.
Okay, Eric Drago.
So update on our office space search. So we've narrowed it down to a building to replace our current location in Rocky Hill, and we're currently working through some specifics with the landlord. We had a virtual tour today for our broader staff, and I will forward you guys a link to the video as soon as I get it, of space at the Connecticut Nonprofit Center on 75 Charter Oak Ave, which is in Hartford. It's between downtown Hartford and the Colt Park area. It's about less than a mile from the castle. It's a great old building, former screw factory, and it's filled with a ton of mission-aligned and mission-adjacent organizations. I think one of my favorite things is there's free parking, so that's one less thing to worry about. and the ownership of the building is in the process of LEED certification and is interested in our assistance for solar and energy efficiency retrofit space. We're currently working with that. Our space would occupy the majority of the ground floor there. One of the buildings, we would have 14 offices, a cafe area, 5 conference rooms, and then a large open space with staff that we are currently planning with COVID-19 compliance in mind. Being that it's an old factory, we're taking advantage of the open concept and the original brick walls and beams, and there is does accommodate some growth for us. The economics of the deal where it currently stands on an annual basis would be in line, if not cheaper, than what we're presently paying in Rocky.
Okay.
So I will bring
Eric Brown. Excuse me one second, Eric. Eric Brown, I think if you could put your phone on mute, that would be good. Go ahead.
All right. So I'll bring updated economics next week when we're looking for a recommendation. And I think that just based off of where we are in the process, I'd want to review the economics with the committee and then ask for you to recommend the board empower Brian and staff to negotiate a lease within a specific range of those economics. Moving on to our Stanford replacement, we're focused on 700 Canal Street, which is on the opposite side of the tracks from where we presently are in Stanford. It too is a converted factory that's convenient to downtown Stanford, and it's a little bit closer, not by much, to the train than we presently are. Lots of stuff around. There's free on-site parking, so yay, I'm happy about that. There's also a shuttle to Metro North, and there are bike racks on site. It's a little bit smaller space in the building than we presently have, but due to the layout, it's open. So we would have 4 offices, a kitchen, conference space, and then open space for staff. We're going with the existing modern installation that's there. I have a video that I can play you of our in-house photographer, Bert Hunter, took. That I don't know if anybody's actually has the video in front of them. So if you want to pull it up from Board Effect or from what Cheryl forwarded, you can take a look at the video there. Or I can send it around separately. But you're able to get a good view of the space. The economics of this property, while we're still working things out with the landlord, where we currently are is within about the cost would be about $10,000 a year more than what we're presently paying on our current space in Stanford. So we can get better space that for the same amount of money is kind of a no-brainer to me. So again, we'll be coming to the board next week looking for a recommendation, and it would be a recommendation kind of the sorts that I described previously. So,
okay.
More to come, but just so you know, we are making progress, and I just wanted to build towards that recommendation next week.
All right.
Any questions or thoughts before?
Yeah, this is Eric. That's great news. I'm wondering, is there any, other than having a little, sign in the lobby or something, is there going to be any opportunity on the exterior or the roof or whatever to, indicate that the green bank is located there, or is it going to be a little bit more?
Only in one building has that come up, thus far, and they actually ended up not giving us a proposal after having initially proposed to give us a huge billboard along the side of 84. So we can talk about it. I like the idea. Based off of what's currently on the sides of both buildings, I don't think there's a huge opportunity. That said, both buildings have a lot of connectivity to the communities that they're in. So as I mentioned, the Connecticut Nonprofit Center, there are multiple buildings there. The developers of that also own a residential building adjacent to it. There are partnerships with the church across the street and other buildings in the community. Being that we're coming in with CPACE on that, we're going to ideally be able to build a network through that community and build our brand through that. While it's not the same as the visual advertising, it does get us something. And in Stanford, that landlord is currently working with us to develop CPACE on that 700 Canal building, and they're interested on their building that's adjacent at 800 Canal, and they are talking about making introductions to the landlords of a new building that's going in further down the street. So again, we should search for new buildings every year. I mean, if we can get this much CPACE out of it. Yeah. So.
Well, I agree with Eric Brown, though, that if someone at some point there was a decision or a recommendation or something that happened in Hartford, where downtown Hartford office buildings were encouraged to put on the outside of them what companies they were, and it makes a real difference because these are some very reputable companies, and it's really the idea of the Green Bank having that kind of marquee that could be seen from the highway or seen farther than just if you were at the door, I think is a really cool idea that maybe we could work out.
Okay. Let me add that to the list with the brokers, and I will see what we can do.
Cool. So we've heard from the director of financing, the director of marketing, the personnel director, so many different people.
Right. I'm going to develop individual voices and personalities for each of them.
I'm sure you will, right before they take you away. Is there any other? We don't have any other business at this point, do we?
Nope.
So, is there anything else that any member of the committee wants to raise before we adjourn? Hearing nothing, a motion to adjourn is in order.
This is Eric.
Thank you.
All right, we've got what I perceive as a motion and a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting's adjourned, and thank you all for hanging in, and thank you, Eric and Brian, for your presentations of some very complicated issues.
Be well, John.
Well, thank you all for entertaining them. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Well, take care, folks. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
This conference will now be recorded.